For this little video session, I am going to demonstrate how to decorate this paper mache box. And as you can see, it resembles a book. And I would like to paint it with some sort of design and yet have it look kind of like a book. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Since it's paper mache, it's going to require having gesso put on there, or gesso. I pronounce it gesso. And it's acrylic gesso. This is a quick drying one with a matte finish. I find that's the kind I like best for this kind of thing. And it is a very messy endeavor. However, I'm going to show you how to use it. It looks a lot like marshmallow cream. But what it does is take a surface like this that's kind of porous and make it so it can be painted on more easily with such as acrylic paints or oil. I don't know about oil paint. I heard you could, but I've never tried it. So I don't really want to guarantee that that would work. But definitely I'm going to use acrylic paint on it. And there are mediums similar to gesso for watercolor paint. But I want to do this one in acrylic. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Now sometimes it takes more than one coat of this. But I'm going to try to get away with just one. You're not going to be able to see it when I'm done painting it on there. But it definitely will make a difference. If you do not put this on, the porous material of the paper will make the paint not set on there quite like it should. And of course, I may have to do this in several little mini sessions to get a good coverage, because I'm going to do all sides of the book. I call it a book, it's a box, but it looks like a book. Alright, I'm going to do the back. And I have not finalized the idea that I want to do for the cover. I was kind of thinking of making it look like some kind of antique tome. However, I may change my mind by the time I get done drying the gesso. Even though this says quick drying, you do want to leave it set even after it feels dry, because as will be done with the acrylic paint, underneath that dry feel can still be some pockets of moisture. And if you get too speedy about covering it with other stuff, it will greatly damage your final result. So that's that for that part. And I will come back later. I gotta clean out the brush fairly quickly, but I will come back later and do the areas where the pages would be if it were a real book. Let me tell you about the brush. I have one brush I use for gesso, and sometimes I use it for varnish, but due to the nature of these coatings, I'm a little worried about not getting it all the way clean, so I don't use it for paint very often. I have one identical to this, so I gotta be careful I don't mix them up. But this size is about a 1 inch, maybe 3/4 inch. And I find it does the best job for larger surfaces like this for gesso. And you get an idea. This one's a white gesso. You can add color to it. But since you're not going to be able to see any of it after I'm done, it's not going to matter that it's white. And I may make the book black with a design, and still you won't be able to tell I used white gesso. Anyway, let me stop this, and after it's dry, I'll come back and do a little bit more. Now that this is dry enough, well, I didn't mean for that to happen, but that often does. No problem. Oh, we got a little wet spot. No problem. Just smooth it out. Okay, it's dry enough though that I can do the area where the pages would be. Again with gesso. Messy old gesso. Anyhow, I don't think I'm going to do the inside of the cover. At least not right now. because I haven't really decided what I'm doing with this exactly. I'm going to have to put a little bit on there to smooth it out. But since it's not going to necessarily hold a lot of paint on it, probably don't need much gesso. And I am a messy painter, if you haven't noticed it already. Of course, with gesso, it's not quite as important to be a perfect painter, but still would be nice for it to look decent. Okay, now I got that side done, and I'm going to have to wait for that to dry, and if it feels smooth enough, I can go ahead and demonstrate painting this project after this. And we can get some ideas by then on what would look good. Anyhow, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to start adding some color to this. And normally I would sand this down, maybe put more gesso on, but this is just a simple project, and I'm not going to go to all that trouble at this time anyway. But what I will do, which will make up for the sanding, is put a little glazing medium in my paint. And this is an acrylic, that's a water-based paint. I'm going to use a fairly large angle brush because this is just a large area. And I'm deciding yet if I want to add the opposite color to the red to give it a darker shade in places, to kind of give an antique effect, but I'll see how it goes as we progress on this. I've not rehearsed this project, so it may turn out more interesting than what I thought. That's a pretty bright color. I may need to tone it down with a little something to not make it look too bright for whenever we want to use it for eventually. Cover up all that white. Now by adding a medium to the paint, it helps it stay wet just a little longer and spread a little better. So if you're wanting your paint to have less brush strokes, then you want to add some medium to it, or if you need it to stay wet a little longer. I notice when I'm painting on gesso, it tends to dry a lot quicker, and that can be a real problem when you are trying to create something and the paint starts making little balls of acrylic paint, and that is not an outcome you want. I think I did a little better adding the gel to it. I use gels and liquids interchangeably. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing, a liquid works better because you want more flow. But I find the gel gives it a little bit of body. So when you are trying to achieve a little bit of a texture, perhaps not really a 3D effect, but something similar to that on a smaller scale, then you might want to use a gel. And they do make sculpting type mediums if you're wanting to go really big into the texture. I'm adding this a little time because I really don't want to waste paint. Acrylic paint can get kind of expensive. Actually, all the paints can, even the cheap dollar stuff, if you buy enough of it. It'll be hard on the budget. That's another reason to use the mediums. You can stretch your paint a little further. The mediums themselves aren't exactly cheap, but they do seem to go a little further than the paint itself, in my experience. And again, that goes down to style and technique. This will need more than one layer, so if I want it to look good. So you can see the brush strokes in it at the moment, and I'm just giving a base coat essentially. Once you have a base coat down, anything else you put on it will go a lot better. But anyway, I'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and see what it needs. It keeps sticking to the paper, so I'm hoping it kind of quits doing that. Try to get rid of any globs. Okay, see you in a couple of minutes. Now, I think everything's dry. I can put on a second coat. I'm just mixing up my paint with my gloss medium. Start here. This is the area that'll probably get seen the most, so let me begin with that one, because I will put it on a shelf as if it's a book, but inside we can put whatever we want. It'll probably be my rock collection or more shells I pick up, because I am a collector of rocks. If I find them and they're interesting, I do pick them up, as long as they are in the public domain, like seashells on the beach. I'm going to get into painting rocks for leaving around for people to find. I enjoy finding them occasionally. I just haven't gotten into painting them yet. There we go. You can see the second coat really looks a lot better than that first coat. And that first coat's mainly just a primer for the final coat. You can't even see the brush strokes quite as prominently on the second coat, even though from my point of view where it's wet and close up, I can see it pretty well. Okay, that's the second coat. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to leave that dry, and we'll go on to the decorating the book to look like a book. Well, my paint is dry, and you can see it's a very nice coating of the red. Looks fairly smooth. And now all I've got left is the area where the pages of a book would be. And I've decided, because I got gesso all over the interior there, that I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt umber and try to make what would look like the interior of the cover. And maybe I'll even do the interior of the cover. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to see how the titanium white goes for the pages. And then I'll start filming, and the details, the decorations, all that I plan to do with it. I'm not going to go real elaborate because it is a storage box, and I'm not going to be working with it a lot where anybody's going to see it, so I'm not going to put a lot of effort into it. But anyway, I'll get back when I have done painted this with the white and the interior here with the brown, and you can see how I go about decorating the cover. And this is just an example of a project you can do. You can do it any color, any style, whatever you want, if you choose to do it. I will put a list of my materials and the brushes and all that in the worksheets and the materials list and all that, which should be available for download about the same time I post the video. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Okay, I have touched up areas. I made some brown insert. I did not gesso the inside of the cover, so you can see that it definitely would have done better if I had. But I didn't want to use up a lot of gesso. I didn't have a lot of time I wanted to spend on it. And of course the white for the pages and the cover in red. I thought long and hard on what would look good, what would look similar to a book, and decided that I'm going to just add a few accent lines. And I want to decide how to make them straight, so I just took an index card and a pencil. I'm going to make some guidelines. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can erase the pencil afterwards carefully or the paint will come off. And books tend to have these little lines on the covers. So I was going to make something very simple, because this paper mache book, I'm finding that it wants to warp and some other things. It's really not the best material. I would suggest, if you're going to make storage boxes and paint them, especially with acrylic paint, that you invest in some actual wooden boxes or some sort of material that's made to be painted on. This is going to have to be, it might not be perfect straight. I'm doing the best I can with it. Just have to get an idea. So, guess I want to make that kind of a rectangle. And you can use an actual T-square, something a little fancier. But for this project, I'm not going to get all that worked up about a little imperfection. However, there will be other projects I'll be a little bit more picky about. It's hard to pick up this thing. You can see where I've made some mistakes in the line. Like I mentioned before, you can erase that stuff later. Or paint over it, whichever. Or call it a feature and leave it on. Okay, I got a line marked at the ends. I think I'll do the ends first. You can also use these chalk, can't remember if they're called quilter's chalk or tailor's chalk, whatever. And they'll be in your sewing department of most of your craft stores. And you can replace the little chalk lid, but it makes a much smaller chalk line than your normal student chalk. And the chalk will allow the paint to go on without causing any problems. And I chose this Indian yellow because it's kind of a gold color, but you can use whatever you want. And for this side, I'm going to need a small brush, which hopefully I can keep it in the lines. And it's going to take more than one coat probably. Even though this is pretty decent paint, it's really not gonna, that bright red is just gonna show through. Actually, I think I can use a little bit larger paintbrush, get it done a little bit quicker. My problem is with this flat brush, you can see it wants to wipe off almost as well as go on. Okay, the base coat's going to look pretty bad. It always does when you paint. There's just no way around it. You'll be surprised how well it'll look on the second coat. I just like the red paint. It looked kind of like this when I first put it on. Kind of nasty. So I definitely will need to do a second coat on that. And then of course inside the lines here. Now, if you don't want to watch me try to do this as neat as possible all the way around, I am going to pause the video and I'll come back when I've got that done all the way around. Okay, I went all around the mark I made there, and of course there's still wet paint over there. And as you can tell, it needs another coat, but you get an idea of how that'll look. And I will come back when I'm ready to do the second coat. This is going to take probably 30 minutes to dry well enough for me to do that coat. And then we should be pretty well done, except for the pages. And I'm going to do something a little different with that. I decided the texture of this is not going to be very, very advantageous to use paint on the page papers. it will probably take a marker. So anyway, I'll be back. Well, I had to put on a couple extra coats because I forgot that this Indian yellow is rather transparent. So I mixed it with a little titanium white, which helps it become opaque. And you have a much bolder color show up there. I also got a fatter brush and made smoother strokes. Now for the final thing I want to do is take a metallic marker and kind of, gotta take off my glasses, give this a little bit more definition. Because it's really hard with this paper mache to paint nicely on it. It is not the best material, that's for sure. If you really want to do this and have it look nice, I would definitely go for wood, or see if you could buy a container that's made special for painting on, because this obviously is not, especially with the warping. But once you get some definition lines around, it cleans it up a good bit. But I can feel even under my hand that paper mache, even though with the gesso and all that on there, the texture really is difficult to work with. I'm gonna just make a line. That almost makes it worse, doesn't it? It actually looks better once you get a few coats of even the marker on and put it around. Now, if you want to put a title on your little book case here, you certainly can. I couldn't think of one I really wanted because of the point of it being a storage type container. I mean, if you put something on there like Once Upon a Time, perhaps you could. You can make it anything you want. That's the fun of creating. Now I'm going to continue to go around here until I get a nice thick gold line around that yellow. And of course that's going to take a while, so rather than put that all on the film and be boring, I'll continue to do that. You'll get to see it in the final thumbnail picture. And like I said, you could give it a title. How about Once Upon a Time. There. And you could do the same for the thing there, but this is so hard to write on, I'm not going to do that, I think. Anyhow, I'll finish putting this on, and there'll be a materials list and a worksheet to tell a little bit of the process on the website, and it should be available for download about the time I put the video up. I'm going to continue this and put it in the thumbnail, like I said. And if you try this, I hope you get creative. Choose your own colors, your own style, your own title, whatever you want. Oh yeah, I forgot the pages. Just for that, I would recommend a fine line or something easy to write with. And just make, I'm trying to do that so you can see it, lines down there for the pages. If you have something to make them straight, that's probably better. Although if you look at a book, when it's on its side, once you read a book, the pages start warping a little bit, and your favorite pages start wanting to open to that page, things like that. But you can. I wouldn't probably go to all this trouble if I was doing this for my own general use, but you absolutely can do what you want with it. And I'm going to continue with that, and like I say, I'll post the thumbnail. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little project, and I'll see you in another project.